Hey, good morning. Did you miss me? YouTube? How you guys doing? You have last almost a week worth of fun, good activities, helping other people, getting in touch with the Lord, etc.? Well, Pastor Joe and I are here at High Prairie Acres, obviously doing a familiar social event. And we've been enjoying the air conditioning and the running water like you guys do on a daily basis. And while we were up here, we saw a movie. And when I first saw the previews for it, I thought, that's going to be interesting. And the reason I find it interesting is because ideas that come out in movies sometimes then turn into reality. Robots is one of the examples. Sometimes it's political. Let me give you an example. Clothing. They have clothing in a movie, and then all of a sudden people are like, yeah, I kind of like that, and it comes out in Kmart and wherever, Dillard's, and you get to wear what you saw in the film. So this film is called The First Purge.
Announcing the commencement of The First Purge.
And it is a social experiment. And that
First Purge.
Tonight allows people a release for all the hatred and violence that they keep up inside them.
That's why I thought it was very, very interesting. So when I went to see the movie, I went to see it with the eyes of what's being put out, because it's also propaganda in this movie. And my daughter told me, the neo-hermetess told me, she liked it, but I wouldn't like the politics of it. And I get kind of where she made that assessment, but I was looking at it in a completely different way. I don't even know if I did like it. It was more like watching something on the news and then analyzing it. Anyway, The First Purge is about the government closing down part of America and allowing everyone who wants to be in there to do whatever they want that's illegal for a certain amount of time. And the government is doing this based on the scientific, it's not an experiment, but a theory, because in science, you have to test a theory. You look at things, you come up with a theory, and then you test it. And if you can get it, the same results over and over, then it becomes like a scientific law, like this. Sometimes you drop something, it falls down. And our government does do things based on science. And I'll give you at least two examples. One of them is our government did an experiment in the 1930s. Hey, I'm doing a video here. Hang on. In the 1930s, our government told poor black men, a certain group, that they would be given treatment if they came to a certain, place. And it happened over several years, and what was happening is they were actually giving these men a placebo to watch the effects of the venereal disease as it worked on them, on their physical body, until it killed them. And that was not very nice. So our government sometimes does not nice things in the name of science and research to its citizens. And the same thing was when they were testing nuclear things and bombing out in the Nevada desert. People who were living in that area were bombarded with radioactivity. And I don't know the exact little details of whether the government let them know it was going to happen, but the government at the time didn't know the results. And so even if they told you, yeah, we're going to be doing this thing and you can leave, the ground is radiated and your buildings are radiated, and, I'm sure there were some people who sued the government and probably got monetary reward for that. But I don't want to get too deep into the details, because this video, please stay along for the ride. There was a lot to be seen in there and a lot to talk about it. So the main thrust of the movie is the government is bad. And the person who's running the government program is a super evil white man who does not care about the citizens at all. And he's actually kind of more on the eugenist side of the coin, where he wants to get rid of undesirables. So that's the main idea there. And then another really big one, which you're seeing it. Excuse me, I have to blow my nose because I've got a cold going on now. But videos and stuff are talking about a civil war. And it's been talked about since the 60s with white people versus black people or people of color. And I think this is a very dangerous thing to try to stir up. I think it's a way, again, because I've said it in other videos, to destabilize a population and therefore destabilize a government. And I think the media does it to cause that destabilization. Anyway, this movie has that in there, but it's not specifically only about that. It's just one of the little things it touches on. So it's not all that. And if you look at that in reality, I believe there's a certain amount of elites versus the rest of the population, not necessarily blacks versus whites or whites versus color, but elites versus non-elites. And you see that in history in the French Revolution, when the nobility and royalty had a lot more money and a way better standard of living than the people who were peasants. And so the French had an uprising. The peasants, lop off the heads of a good deal of their nobility, including their king and queen. And I know there are theories, conspiracy theories, that people put forward that the elites want to kill off like a third of the population so they have more. I don't know any elites, so I don't know if that's true or not, but you kill off a third of the population of the world and take it back down to 4 million, you've just eliminated, all sorts of people, doctors and lawyers and clerks and whatever. It would be a very changed world, and I don't know that the elites would have gotten anything more out of it. This is a point I made with my husband about elites. They still have to go to the bathroom. They still have to wear clothes. They have to put shoes on their feet and pants on their body, and they're in the same closed system that we are. So while they may be fighting a way to, or fighting to find a way to get out of this closed system, like putting their brains in a computer or, getting blood transfusions to extend their lives, God is in control of this world, not them. And he has put a 120-year limit on people after the flood, and there's no way they're going to get around that. It's just not going to work for them. All right, so let's move on to the next point. I don't want to bore you, but I hope you do stay for the whole video. So another idea put forth in the movie is that the poor are expendable. And this is in line with the eugenicists. And Margaret Sanger is one of the big names in it, and she's the one who started Planned Parenthood. She and her ilk, the main idea of eugenicists is that superior people get to have offspring and continue to, their family line to continue to go on, where less desirable people should be eliminated. And abortion is one of the ways they come up with to make that happen. So is city planning. In cities, when you have those huge apartment buildings where everyone's living one on top of each other in a big concrete jungle, that's by plan, that's by design. Because when people live that way, they tend to prey upon each other because they're too close together, and that was a design. So the poor being expendable is in the movie, but it's also a reality. There's a whole lot of people who think that way. Another idea in the movie that it's kind of new and it caught my attention. Obviously, it's in the title, called The Purge, or the first purge, is of purging. And it's kind of tied to human beings having a need to release anger, to release violence, and to not be hemmed in. It's part of the scientific theory that I was talking about earlier in the video. There is a scientist figure. She comes up with a theory. She takes it to the government, and the government gloms onto it, and it's going to use it as a way to get their eugenicist ideas across under the cover of, this is going to be better for everyone if we allow these people with all this anger built up to just purge it out. And I don't know that I've seen that before in a movie or in a book. And it catches my attention because it seems like a really bad idea. And that our government would use it is kind of heinous. And it is tied a lot to the males, because males have all that testosterone, and they have, you know, more muscles than a woman. Yes, people can develop their muscles to be very strong, both men and women, but men have the hormones naturally that makes them, you know, much stronger. And part of civilization is the means by which men harness their natural energy. If they are not taught how to control it, then it does express itself in out of control ways of, you know, vandalism and theft, and then gang activity, and and violence escalates when you've got all that power and motivation behind it. It escalates. That's how human beings are. And so I think it's an interesting concept that they say, you know, we need to have a purge, and we're going to try to control the purging. And it reminds me of the gladiators in the old times, you know, just competing against each other while everyone watches. And when you're a person who watches things like that, what is appealing to you, at least on one level, is that you had some experience or feeling similar, and you're feeling those feelings again as you watch the action going on. So it's something to keep our eye on in the future. How does this idea come up again, and how are they presenting it? Playing football in general, I think sports in general is one of the ways that you can take the energy that especially a man, I'm not saying women can't, but especially men can generate, and then to put it in a positive direction. All right. We'll talk about the military tactics in the film just generally. Like most Hollywood films, it has horrible military tactics, and I don't have military experience where I was not a soldier, but I've been around my husband for 20 years, and I've picked up things, and I can tell you, they have people doing all sorts of really ridiculous stuff in that movie. So if you're looking to movies for your defensive behavior, don't do it. And not this movie. They've got the young man. He's the, you know, innocent younger brother of the heroine, wandering around streets with a firearm all by himself during the purge, looking for someone he's trying to get revenge on. Horrible idea. He just stumbles around right and left, and he falls into, you know, situations where people are trying to kill him. Well, no duh. This is just put some thought into it. It's a very bad idea. The women, by and large, are all in a church praying, which is always a good idea. However, if you're going to do something like that in a situation where they are, you need to make that church a whole lot more secure than they had it. They had 2 guys out front who were armed, and that was about it. That's just not a very good plan. And the women were not individually armed. Again, just a horrible plan. And when they find out that the church has gone under attack, they just run home in the middle of the street while this purge thing's going on. Terrible, terrible idea. They should be individually armed, and they should be going to her house, but doing it in a very systematic way, checking all the time behind and before and where they're going to avoid danger. Just going to say that. They do stereotype some things in the movie, and I'm interested in what is being stereotyped. What are they putting out, and how are they portraying stereotypes? So they had a bad guy drug dealer who ends up being the hero. So he's kind of like in old westerns, the prostitute with a heart of gold. He's a drug dealer, but he, you know, is going to go defend his people, at least some of them. He's going to get his guys, and he's going to organize them and try to fight against military mercenaries who are brought in by the government into the situation. And that's a very stereotypical, you know, the hero. He has things that are holding him back. He's not great at stuff, and yet he surges forward at the end, and he does something truly heroic. The heroine girl is a bad female because she used to hang out with that guy who's turned good, and now she's a social justice warrior, and she's very interested in her community, which I think is a good thing. I think being interested in your community and knowing people and interacting with them on a regular basis, going to church or babysitting kids or going to the park or, you know, being part of some chess club or whatever, I think that's a good thing. Then they had the very, very bad government official who was a white guy and kind of pudgy. And then they had a very, very bad black guy whose name was Skeletor, who's a psychopath. And to me, that was actually kind of a step forward for Hollywood because they don't always want to portray people of color as being normal. And psychopaths can be of any color. So I thought that was actually not a horrible stereotype. Another theme in the movie was money as reward. And in a capitalist society, of course, money can be used as a reward. But as the Bible says, the love of money is the root of all evil. And it's not saying money in and of itself is evil. Render under Caesar what is Caesar. So if you need money to get food, then you get money to get food. It's just part of life. Your salvation doesn't rest on that. But when the love of money makes you do something like gamble away all the money you have to feed your family or to pay your rent, then that is evil. And so the money in this movie is used as compensation. If you are willing to stay in the area where the purge will happen or video yourself purging or other people purging, then you will get monetary reward. And of course that's hinky, but there would be people who would do that thing if it were offered to them. And there are people who commit crimes for money and assassinations and so on. So that's nothing new. And there's, in my eyes, there's nothing wrong with having that in a movie. It's not a new idea. But you might want to think about that yourselves, because if you're someone who follows myself or my husband and you think an end time scenario might occur, then you need to get your head right on money and what you'd be willing to do when things are scarce, when you are hungry, when your family is hungry or in danger. And you beware and already know up front what you will or will not do for money in those circumstances. Some of the good ideas in the movie that were put forth is that there can be, and there are, people who are evil can be of any color. And the Skeletor character kind of personified that. But the other idea about that you need to be aware of is evil is not always very obviously evil. It does not come in the form of someone all scarred up and with weird teeth and, you know, salivating when they talk to you and stuff. I mean, that dude, I wouldn't deal with that dude on a normal basis, let alone in a purge situation. So keep your eyes peeled for evil, because it comes in many forms. And it doesn't have to necessarily even be male or adult. Another good idea was that people of all color were in the target area. I mean, they portrayed it as predominantly black, but there were people of all colors in the area and people of all colors who survived and participated in the purge. On the flip side of that, all the evil mercenaries were white, and there was a certain amount of dealing with cultural pain in that they made the very evil white men look like pigs. So that's police or policemen or Nazis. And that's just sort of a way for the directors to kind of touch on it. There is cultural bad memory about Nazis to Jews and people of alternate lifestyles, because the Nazis killed everybody who wasn't a Nazi. They killed, you know, gypsies and homosexuals and just everybody. But by having the hero character in this movie, who was black, fight those guys and kill them, it's kind of a way for the black community culturally to be saying like, we're done with that. And I think that's healthy. I think there's something very unhealthy about dragging around biases that are 200 and 300 and 400 years old. It's way better to just look at what's happening in your life at the time and identify the problems in your life and deal with those. And that's not necessarily a Nazi. There's such a small percentage of any population anymore. There's probably some other thing that's more dangerous to you, like driving your car safely. Anyway, I thought that was kind of healthy that they had the male character overcome that, because it's setting a precedent along with the movie about, sorry, I can't remember the title of it, but it's got a male hero, a black male hero. It's repairing some of the damage that was done during the time of slavery, when a male was taken from his family, and now what a black family consists of is a mom and her kids. By having these male characters be heroes, you're putting him back in the place where he should be, where he's a strong, trustworthy, responsible person and head of a household. Not unlike Obama as president, setting that that stereotype for the culture in general. I think that's very healthy. And so that is my assessment of the movie. If you've seen it, I would love to hear what you thought about it. Go see it if you think you'd be interested in seeing these ideas put forth too. And what it's going to say to you, aside from the mindset of what's being put out in theaters to the general public, and what the general public will be watching and seeing, because I really hope the general public doesn't think there will be something like a purge ever, that white people want to, victimize anybody, but that you also keep your eyes open to the government, in the guise of science or whatever, taking advantage of you, and what social ideas and where the movement of the society goes is not a danger to you personally. And so you can take away a few lessons in that. You do need to be ready for things. You need to be looking at news and what's being put out in your life, in your lifetime, what's on radio shows. You need to be organized. If you think there's a danger, whether it be fire or mudslinging or whatever, you need to be organized to react to that. In the case of fire, you would make sure that any flammable, like your yard, is not all just dead grass, and that you have water sources, and you can put down rock instead of, lawn decorations around your home so fire can't come right up against it. There's lots of ways, but that's just an example. And that you have a plan. Because I always like to put myself in that situation. If this thing were happening in my neighborhood, if people were going to take money for this and they were going to be letting loose, I certainly would be putting up all kinds of defenses, both in my home and for myself personally. And to have, because I think it was over a 12-hour period, what am I going to do in the first 2 hours? What am I going to do in the next 2 hours? What am I going to do in the next 2 hours? And what do I think the biggest threats are, and how am I going to deal with them? And that's a lesson you can do in your life right now, because we don't live in a perfect world and things can happen. And so you want to be ready for them. I look forward to your comments. I'm glad I went to see the movie. I don't recommend or not recommend it to you, and I certainly haven't given you the totality of what was in it. Hey, now I'm trying to do a video. All right. Shalom. Bless you all.